And we are now being joined by our legal experts tonight, criminal defense attorneys Brian and Luke Sheely. Guys, thank you so very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Let's dive into what happened today. I know on Friday night's broadcast, both of you were saying that if the judge allowed the allegations of financial mismanagement charges, whatever you want to call it, against Alec Murdaugh in this trial to be used as evidence, then basically his goose was cooked. You guys sticking by that tonight?
Cooked. Yeah, it seemed like Judge Newman was heavily leaning towards allowing that type of evidence. He took the weekend to think about it. We heard a little bit more today from Attorney Tinsley, and then he made his ruling. And it's coming in, and it's not just a part of it, it's all of it. From confrontations the day of the incident, to fraudulent clients, to fraud against the bank, everything. And so it's very bad news for the defense.
Brian, what's your take on all this? The financial allegations against Murdaugh being allowed, what's that going to mean in this trial?
It means Alec Murdaugh has got an uphill. The judge is really supposed to be the gatekeeper, but he's also supposed to consider what the state considers its motive. And so here, whether the state honestly believes that's the motive or can't think of anything else to really come up with as the motive, they are going to be allowed to talk about all these other bad acts, financial malfeasance. And like I said previously, I think it's going to make it incredibly hard for Mr. Murdaugh because he's going to have to take the fifth. He's going to have to deal with a jury that knows from credible witnesses that he's a liar. And if they didn't have that information coming in, they can kind of look at this in a clean way. So Luke and I have been talking about this all day. The criminal defense lawyers in us cringe at this kind of evidence coming in, but it's great for the state. It helps them tell their story. Judge Newman was talking about res gestae, and that is exactly that, the state's ability to be able to tell their story how they see fit here.
And you talk about the alleged financial crimes committed by Alec Murdaugh. The state, the prosecution here, basically saying that the motive in all of this, the motive for killing his wife and his son, they say, is to buy him more time, a distraction, so to say, so he could focus on the financial allegations against him. Is that what you guys are picking up?
That is what the state is saying, and we've really tried to wrestle with that. I understand that without that, they have really no motive. They have this horrible situation, these horrific crimes in a vacuum, so they want a motive, and you have this just wealth of other bad crimes and wrongs. But to say it's a distraction or it was a way to prevent uncovering financial crimes, there's just something missing there. Again, if we were going to hear some evidence about, late night calls to the insurance carrier about tweaking life insurance and amounts of payouts, to me that would have a sufficient nexus where you could really say, boom, there's a motive. But just to say this would be like, look over here, look at me, I'm a victim, and to say that would somehow put off the discovery of the crimes, it's just missing something. So we'll see what the jury thinks.
You agree with that?
I do, and I just thinking about this, now that we know this evidence is coming in and that Alec Murdaugh is going to have to deal with it, the one thing that he's going to not have to worry about anymore is his own character. Early on, Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin were tiptoeing around, not opening the door to his character for fear that all this would come in. It came in, and so I think you saw that a little bit today with Jim Griffin when he was examining another one of Paul's friends, and he got to really freely go into the idea that Alec Murdaugh was the father figure to all of Paul's friends, and Maggie was the mother figure, and that Maggie and Alec's relationship was great. And so they're going to be diving into building up his character, knowing what's coming down the pipeline.
I want to go into the testimony of the caregiver for Murdaugh's mom, Michelle Smith, I believe is her name, testifying today that Murdaugh was indicating that perhaps he had been at his parents' house 30 or 40 minutes. She remembers 20 minutes, but she also gave a time frame, I believe, somewhere between 8:30 to 9:30. Well, we know that the dog kennel video was made about 8:45 tonight, so if his voice is on that tape, there's no way he's at his parents' house at 8:30 that evening, correct?
That's right. That was pretty fascinating. I don't think the state is wanting the jury to think that 8:30 to 9:30 is set in stone. She just knows that they watched a certain TV program at that time. But what she does know is someone that's, a friend of the family, a longtime caregiver, is that he came that she described it as being somewhat unusual due to him usually not coming on our shifts, but that was an unusual day. That was the day that his father went in the hospital. He came. The state wanted to point out that he was fidgety, but then again, she said he was always fidgety. He held his mom's hand. They laid in bed, and she was saying today on direct that it was about 20 minutes. Turns out it looks like previously she had said more, maybe 30, 40 minutes. So that was the battle today. She had a lot of built-in kind of inconsistent testimony, which can be normal for a lay witness who's not a professional witness. But there was this huge debate about whether we're talking about he had in his hands days later a blue tarp or a blue raincoat. The state very much wanted it to be maybe a blue raincoat he had, because that's what they found in the closet later, and that's what we think is going to have gunshot residue. But today on the stand, she was pretty consistent. I saw a tarp, and the tarp was a thing that they found but never tested. So.
Right. But she's also testifying that he brought it over at like 6:30 in the morning, didn't she? And then she said he never came over that early in the morning.
Right.
Yeah, JR, that's true. And, the thing about that is that, she was the most, in my opinion, the most captivating witness, not credible, not the most credible, but the most captivating witness in this entire trial. She wasn't a member of law enforcement. She wasn't an expert for the state. Now, she was someone very, very familiar with a family member, like some of these friends of Paul Murdaugh. But unlike those friends, she was there the night of and interacted with Alec Murdaugh. So, but like my brother has suggested, she's been interviewed multiple times by both the state and the defense. And the idea of a blue tarp came in really, as she testified to, she got into an accident and mentioned it to a responding officer in her own accident sometime later. And that kind of got the attention of law enforcement, and by her own testimony, this, visualization of whether it was a tarp or a raincoat would have happened over a week from the night of the killing. So, right now, Dick Arputian and Jim Griffin are making a relevance argument right now for that very reason. Is it a tarp? Is it a raincoat? She basically said, I saw both. They're debating about pulling up the transcripts and taking a look at that. And then there's a big relevance argument on, so what if there is GSR on a raincoat in a closet in Hampton County? I think Dick Arputian said there's a lot of GSR and a lot of coats, but it is very much removed from the time of the killing. And they were doing a good job trying to, for the state, saying, yeah, she misidentified a tarp for a raincoat. And then on the other side for the defense saying it never was this raincoat. We have pulled out this tarp right fresh from the Kmart package, kind of dramatically in court, and she identified that as pretty much what she saw. And then I think John Metters did a great job of, after Jim Griffin made the SLED analyst actually open the box, which is another dramatic moment in court today. John Metters did a really good job of pretty much having that witness say, yeah, that could have been what I saw. So it's fascinating.
She was very emotional on the stand at times today too, breaking, crying several times. And when she was asked point blank, why you're crying, she cared for this family. And I think that showed to the jury today.
It did, and that's one of the reasons Brian said I think that she's very compelling. She's conflicted. She worked for this family for a long time. She knows them personally. She even said Alec Murdaugh is a good person. She didn't waver on that, but at the same time, she knows there's this terribly suspicious death. It's uprooted probably her personal life for these several years in that small town. And most, I will say this as a defense lawyer that encounters this a lot, most lay witnesses, when they get on a trial, especially a high-profile trial, they want to do what they want to be on the side of what the world considers right. And right or wrong, generally the prosecution is right, and the guy with the double murder charge is kind of the bad guy. So she's sitting here conflicted, knowing that she's testifying in a way that could very well put her former employer in prison for the rest of his life, but also wants to kind of do the right thing. So it's very easy to understand why she's tearful and conflicted.
I know late last week the judge in the case said that both sides needed to get together to try to work out some testimony here when it comes to the alleged financial crimes. Any idea if that was done, or is the judge just going to let whoever the state wants to testify, and this trial, according to the defense, will stretch out a couple more weeks longer with this testimony?
Yeah, it's going to stretch out, JR. What we saw in the in-camera proceeding outside the presence of the jury, we're going to see all of that again, but it'll be slowed down. There'll be more objections because you're in front of a jury. There'll be more rigorous cross-examination. We didn't get a lot of objections to in-camera testimony because it really is for the judge to just kind of take in the evidence. It's a safe spot. The jury's not hearing it for the time being, but it's going to definitely lengthen what's coming next because we're going to hear all of that again, and it's going to be dramatic.
Testimony started on a Thursday, I do believe, not last week, but the week before. So we've had 8 days of testimony now. There was some speculation early on this trial may last 2, maybe 3 weeks, but I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that, the way we're going right now.
I think so, and I think perhaps that early speculation was maybe under the assumption that all of this bad character financial crimes evidence might not come in. Again, that would be kind of the clean version of the trial. But it's coming in, it's there to provide motive according to the judge, so we're going to have 3 or 4 days of that. Then we'll see what else they have. Again, we still haven't heard from pathologists, DNA, whoever might be the wrap-up lead investigator, and then the defense gets to put on its case. So we don't want to lose sight of the fact that every one of these financial crimes, I mean, I just think from the reporting it might be 10, 20, 30, 40. They all, technically have a case somewhere in a different court. So we're basically gonna have little mini trials.
Well, Luke, we haven't heard from Curtis Smith either. You forgot about Curtis Smith. That's going to be almost like a closing witness. I think Creighton Waters referred to him today as a summary witness.
Right.
So that's going to be compelling.
And that was Murdaugh's best friend, correct?
That was the gentleman that allegedly tried to do the assisted suicide on the side of the road.
Got it.
Who has a whole lot more to say, apparently.
All right. As far as gunshot residue is concerned, we talked about that just a moment ago. I don't think they said for sure one way or the other today if they found gunshot residue. And I think if they have found it, they would have told us by now, right?
Well, that last witness we got on gunshot residue, she's the one that collects it to then send to an analyst to write a report and say it is yay or nay and what the particles mean. And so we're going to get gunshot residue. It's pretty clear from the state's opening. It's going to be on his car seat, on his shoulder seat belt. It's going to be in other places. It's going to definitely be on that raincoat as much as they care about it. The question is, can it be explained? And you started to hear Jim Griffin ask those kind of questions to that kind of collecting technician about, well, that you can get transfer just from holding guns or touching people that have been around guns. And she didn't want to answer that question for him, but the ultimate expert on gunshot who did the report, they will be required to answer those questions.
It has been fascinating to see this all start unfolding over the last several days. It's like almost a chess match at times in court. They're making this move, they're making this move, and they're setting it up for the end game here, which is trying to get a murder conviction, a double murder conviction with the jury. At this point, with all of these days of testimony, you've got those 12 jurors sitting there. Do you guys think at this point they are following along closely, or do you think they may have some doubts about something that's been said in court so far?
I think they would have been following extremely closely to today's testimony, especially from Ms. Smith, because, like I said, she's a different kind of witness. She's there. We're finally hearing from someone that that knows the players and saw Alec Murdaugh the night in question, and she was emotional, and she was real. She's a member of the community. I mean, she's not a professional witness. So I think if maybe they've been snoozing a little bit, especially as there are breaks with the in-camera testimony where they're kind of twiddling their thumbs in a jury room, wondering what's going on, I think they probably sat up today. There's a lot of good direct examination and cross-examination from both sides. So yeah, I think their attention is back to where it needs to be right now.
All right. Brian and Luke Shealy, guys, thank you as always.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. And of course, testimony resumes tomorrow morning at 9:30. You can watch the trial of Alec Murdaugh. You can watch it on WLTX.com. You can watch it on our YouTube channel. You can also watch it on WLTX Plus. And of course, we have our team coverage there for you as well. We do have one